Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, I am returning to YouTube after roughly a month away. It's been a busy May for me, and I am glad to get the chance to talk with you all again. Last time, we were looking at, I believe, this bad boy, the Indie Bookstore map for 2023 in advance of 2024's Independent Bookstore Day. That day has come and gone. I managed to restrain myself. I went to a number of bookstores, I believe 5 within my city. And I was able to find some good finds, some books that I had been meaning to read for a while, and some that I found as happy accidents and I'm happy to have. Obviously, the most important thing I got was the 2024 Midwest Independent Bookstore map, which looks, in my mind, largely the same, although it is the same artist doing all of the illustrations, at least on the map itself. And there haven't been any new additions, at least in my area, that I noticed. But it's still a good souvenir. We'll start off with this tower of books, with a used book that I was able to find for $5. Good deal. As you can kind of tell by the way I'm wiggling the cover, I've found a book that's a little worse for wear, but perhaps that's why I was able to find such a good deal. This is the first volume of 3, which I did not realize at the time, for a trilogy, a 3-volume work, essentially. And is one work by the Russian Nobel laureate Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I was exposed to Solzhenitsyn before the pandemic, certainly, but I hadn't read any of his works until sometime after 2020. I want to say 2022. As a Russian writer, he is Russian. He is known for having long books. He does have a novella, One Day in the Life of Ian Denisovich. But he is most famous for his long novels, Cancer Ward, The First Circle, also titled In the First Circle, and his non-fiction account of the Gulag Archipelago, which he named because of the number of different camps in the Gulag system that make a sort of island chain throughout the Soviet Union. Solzhenitsyn was a political prisoner in the Gulag system in Siberia for, I believe, 10 years. And while his account makes up a good portion of the material in this book, it is largely a nonfiction account of the entire system of the Gulag and the entire history of how it changed from an institution from the earliest Bolshevik revolutions and maintained itself through the years of Joseph Stalin and later leaders. So it is as much a autobiography. In fact, it is more so, less an autobiography, and more so a compendium of human stories, of human happenstance and human suffering in the system. I have been able to finish the first part, and I am a good portion of the way through the second part, but in total it's around 75 hours worth of reading. So easily, when finished, it will be the biggest work I've read. And it is not super light reading, as it is not a super light topic, but it has been important in the month or so since I started reading. Because I've been focused on tackling this book, I have not read much of the remainder. But we will talk about how much I know of the remainder. Next, continuing with the Slavic theme, I have Pan Mikhail, a Polish novel, a historical novel by Henryk Sienkiewicz, a Polish author, translated into English, so it is readable by me, by Dr. Samuel A. Binion. It is quite an old copy, dating to 1898, which I believe makes it close to the oldest book in my collection. In fact, let me take a peek. The other book in contention, which I found in the same bookstore as this book, was The Bridge of the Gods, which earlier last year in 2023 I started reading for the channel. But it is quite an old book in terms of the language, in particular in relation to the native characters. So while it is forward-thinking for the time of the 1890s, it is still quite a backwards-looking book, vocabulary-wise, compared to the modern day. And it looks like this book is from 1902 being published, which makes this book in 1898 the oldest book I own. This is quite a large book again as well, although not as large as the Gulag Archipelago, at roughly 500 pages. I have been lucky to have the bookstore where I found this book because of the number of historical donated books it has. I'm always fond of used bookstores for that, because you'll never really know what you'll find and how old the book will be. I don't know much about the book other than that it is Polish and that it is not the first in the series. So I may, after reading this, go back in time to the earlier books in the series. Next is a short story slash nonfiction story collection by a writer named Alex Kotlowitz. It is Never a City So Real, subtitled A Walk in Chicago. I first saw this book at a bookstore. In fact, the bookstore that I found this at in 2023's Independent Bookstore Day. And it managed to be in the same bookstore that I found it this year. So I have been very lucky to find it again. I'm a big fan of the bookstore. It is in the downtown of my city, and it is both a bookstore, bar, and cafe. It's quite unique because instead of storing books by fiction versus nonfiction by genre, it instead organizes books by region. So this book was in the Chicago section of the Midwest section of the bookstore, which I think is a unique way to organize. I certainly have not seen it much in a similar way other than in a nonfiction specific section of a bookstore, but to have fiction and nonfiction stored together is quite novel, and I like it. I've only been able to read the first couple of stories of this author's life in Chicago, but if you've watched any videos on this channel, you will know I love Chicago, and I have fallen in love so far. Next, we have Scorched Grace by Margot Douai, which is a mystery novel set in New Orleans. It was recommended to me by a family member through the New York Times, I believe. And it is intended to be a debut of a series starring a Catholic nun as the mystery solver. I'm not actually sure if it is a murder mystery. I know that it is partially arson based. And I also know that the nun at the center, Sister Halliday, has an unconventional past as a punk band member in a sort of rebellious sense of wanting to solve the mystery before the cops do. I'm excited to read this when I get the chance. Next, we have Near to the Wild Heart, the debut novel from Brazilian author Clarice Lispector. Clarice is a well-known, world-renowned author with a very striking, some might say beautiful image, almost Katharine Hepburn-like, and dramatic, and the drama of her face. But in addition to being a beautiful face, she is also a phenomenal author, well known for an avant-garde stream of consciousness style, common to authors in the 20th century, but with a unique, feminine and feminist take, with typically female protagonists. I've had the pleasure of reading 3, I believe, novels by her, novels or novellas. I read her final work, The Hour of the Star, as well as the stream of consciousness novella, Aqua Viva, Living Water. But her crowning achievement, literary-wise, is her novel, the first novel, I believe, that I read of hers, The Passion According to G.H., A Paixão Segundo G.H., which is a story of a woman who ends up going on a string of anxious self-doubt in her apartment when she feels like the world is falling down upon herself. I'm excited to read this to see where Clarice started. And I'm particularly glad to have found the current New Directions version of the book, which is published with a very striking cover in paperback. And there are 4 books in this series of books of hers that are published in this way, and together they form different portions of a portrait of her face. So, very excited. And lastly, we have a nature book that I purchased from another downtown bookstore, this time a new bookstore, called World of Wonders. World of Wonders by Amy Neshuku Matatil. Who is a author who works for the magazine Sierra, which is the magazine of the Sierra Club in the US. The author is Filipina and is able to draw on the personal history of her family's, her Filipino heritage and her family's, but also her life, her Indian heritage from her dad, and her life in a number of different places in the US, including Arizona, Kansas, New York, and Ohio. It's an illustrated book. Based on an understanding and an appreciation for wonderful plants and animals in the natural world. Like the vampire squid, Vampiroteuthis infernalis. Come on. The corpse flower, Amorphophallus titanum. The bonnet macaque, Macaca laudata. The whale shark, Rhynchodon typus. And the potu, Nyctibius griseus. Just to name a few. Again, I'm very excited to read this. And I've almost forgotten a book that I have elsewhere in my home. I am in the progress of reading The Summer Book by Tuva Jansson. This is a book that I've picked up specifically because it is about to be summer. With the weather that we're having, it definitely feels like summer, almost summer. And I've been eyeing this book for a while, ever since I was introduced to Tuva Jansson, who is a ethnically Swedish-speaking figure in Finland. So, nationally, Tuva Jansson grew up in and lived in Finland, but in the Swedish-speaking official minority population in the West. In the west of Finland. And Tove Jansson is most known for her illustrations and her idea for the Moomins book series, which is well regarded in the continental Europe as well as in Great Britain and Ireland as a pinnacle of children's literature. This, however, is not necessarily a children's book. It has a fairly straightforward older child to young adult phrasing and syntax that follows a young girl and her grandmother through their life on an island, presumably off the coast of Finland, and dealing with the cycles of life as they come and go on the island. And especially with respect to the death of the mother of the young girl, the daughter of the grandmother. So it's a quite poignant book, quite heavy in terms of what I would normally expect from a children's book. But I wasn't expecting that. And so far, it has been meeting my actual expectations. So those were the books that I got on Independent Bookstore Day. I will be very happy and ready for the next one, though I do need to get through these books first before I actually get there. Thank you all for watching. Let me know if you'd like to see even more books from my collection. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to see you all. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.